Welcome to Life Stories, where every tale holds a lesson in love, kindness, and personal transformation. Today, we bring you a story of an unexpected encounter that changed the lives of two people from different worlds. Ryan Mitchell, a millionaire, finds himself stranded and without help, only to be rescued by Madison Clark, a humble diner worker, who offers him a simple act of kindness. Little did they know, that single moment would set them on a journey of love, dreams, and building a future together. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. Ryan Mitchell was a man who had everything: wealth, status, and the ability to command any room he walked into. Yet, on one fateful evening, all of that meant nothing. His luxury car, his phone, his wallet, all of it was taken from him in a matter of minutes. As he was driving through the dimly lit streets of the city, lost in his thoughts about the responsibilities that awaited him the next day, he had inadvertently turned onto a narrow, deserted road. Before he could even gather himself, a group of robbers had already surrounded his vehicle. In an instant, his world flipped upside down. They demanded he step out of the car, his hands raised high, completely powerless to fight back. Minutes later, Ryan found himself standing on the cold sidewalk. His car was gone, his phone was gone, his wallet was gone. The overwhelming rush of adrenaline was slowly replaced by the heavy weight of reality. He had nothing. The city, once so familiar to him, now felt like an alien place. And he couldn't figure out how to get home. The fear that gripped him wasn't just because of the robbery, but because he now had no way to make the calls that could rescue him. No phone, no money, no car. His mind raced, trying to process his next move. He looked around for a moment, realizing that the only thing that could help him get out of this situation was a simple bus ride. With a deep breath, he started walking toward the main avenue, hoping that a bus would be passing by. As he trudged down the street, the weight of his situation sank in further. The world he once knew felt so far away. A few blocks down, he reached a bus stop. There, waiting patiently, was a young woman who caught his attention. Her name was Madison Clark, and she was exhausted after a long day at work. The small diner where she worked had been busier than usual, and she just wanted to get home, sit down, and relax. It was one of those days where nothing seemed to go right. But she had made it through, just like she always did. The bus arrived, and she stepped on, carefully counting the last few coins in her pocket before handing them over to the driver. She walked to the back, found a seat by the window, and closed her eyes for a moment. But just as she started to relax, her peace was broken by a voice from the front of the bus. "I told you, sir. No money, no ride." Madison opened her eyes and looked toward the front of the bus. The driver was speaking impatiently to a man who appeared distressed. He was standing at the door, his clothes disheveled, his body language betraying a deep sense of frustration. Madison couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for him. She heard him speak, his voice shaky but steady. "I was robbed. They took everything, my car, my wallet, my phone. I just need to get home." Ryan's voice trembled with desperation as he tried to explain his situation. His world had turned upside down in an instant. And now, there he was, trapped, unable to go anywhere. The bus driver shook his head, refusing to let him board. Every day, someone comes up with that story. No money, no ride. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm himself. He was not used to being in situations where money couldn't solve everything. Normally, a phone call or a credit card would have gotten him out of this. But now, all his wealth, all his resources, meant nothing. The frustration in his chest rose like a tidal wave. That's when Madison did something unexpected. Without hesitation, she stood up from her seat and walked toward the front of the bus. Her voice, calm and kind, cut through the tension in the air. "I'll pay for his fare." The entire bus fell silent. Ryan looked up in shock. He hadn't expected anyone, let alone a complete stranger, to come to his aid. The driver raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her offer. But Madison didn't flinch. She was simply doing what felt right in the moment. without expecting anything in return. Ryan's mind raced. He opened his mouth to protest. But Madison was already handing the driver the money. "You don't have to do that," he murmured, his voice tinged with embarrassment. Madison, however, was already walking back to her seat, smiling faintly over her shoulder. "Don't worry about it. You better get on before the driver changes his mind." And just like that, Ryan found himself on the bus, sitting a few rows ahead of Madison. The bus started moving again, but his mind was still stuck on the encounter. Who was this woman? What made her help him? She didn't know who he was. She didn't owe him anything. But she had chosen to show him kindness when he least expected it. As the bus rumbled along, Ryan kept stealing glances back at her. She seemed so calm, so composed, as if helping him had been no big deal. It was a stark contrast to the world he was used to, where every interaction had an ulterior motive. Madison wasn't like that. She had simply helped because she wanted to. And that's what struck Ryan the most. When the bus reached Madison's stop, she stood up, ready to get off. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. And for a brief moment, he felt the urge to thank her. He called out to her before she could leave. "Hey," he said, his voice catching slightly. "Thank you. You have no idea how much you helped me today." Madison turned to look at him. Her expression was calm, but there was a glimmer of warmth in her eyes. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes," she said with a small smile. Then, without another word, she walked off the bus and disappeared into the night. Ryan sat back, watching her go. He didn't even know her name. But something about the encounter stayed with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just been altered in a way he didn't fully understand. As the bus continued its route through the bright city, Ryan found himself lost in thought. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about business or status. He wasn't even thinking about the problems that awaited him back in his world. He was thinking about a woman he had met on a bus. A woman whose kindness had shaken him to his core. And he knew, without a doubt, that he would never forget her. The next day, Ryan couldn't shake the memory of the woman who had helped him. Madison Clark, her face, her voice, the simple, unassuming kindness she had shown. He found himself thinking about her constantly. Who was she? What did she do? Why had she helped him when so many others would have ignored him? He was determined to find out. Not out of obligation but because something inside him told him that she mattered. He spent the day in his luxurious penthouse, his mind drifting back to the brief encounter. He had everything he could ever want: money, power, influence, yet none of that had been able to help him when he needed it most. It was a humbling thought, one that unsettled him in ways he hadn't expected. By the end of the day, Ryan's curiosity had won out. He needed to see Madison again. He wasn't sure why, but he felt compelled to. So, he did something he had never done before. He asked his doorman, James, to help him track her down. "I need you to find me a diner near the bus route that passes through downtown," Ryan said, the words sounding strange as they left his mouth. "It must be one where the staff wears blue uniforms." James blinked in surprise but didn't ask any questions. It took a few hours. But by evening, James had the information. The diner was called Riverside Cafe, located on the outskirts of the city center. The next morning, Ryan found himself walking into the small diner, the scent of fresh coffee and warm bread immediately filling his senses. The place was simple, with cozy booths and a homey feel that made him feel like he was stepping into a different world, a world far removed from the cold, polished surfaces of his penthouse. He looked around, trying to spot her. He wasn't sure what he expected, but there was something about Madison that made him feel oddly nervous. It took a moment, but then he saw her behind the counter, a tray of coffee cups in her hands. She was focused, her ponytail swaying slightly as she moved with purpose. Ryan found himself smiling before he even realized it. Madison hadn't noticed him at first. Absorbed in her work, he waited, standing by the counter for a moment, trying to figure out what to say. He wasn't used to uncertainty, but there was something about her that left him feeling vulnerable in a way he wasn't accustomed to. Finally, she looked up, blinking in surprise when she saw him standing there. You? She said, her voice filled with quiet curiosity. Ryan chuckled softly. I know, it's me again. She tilted her head slightly, clearly amused, though there was a hint of suspicion in her eyes. What are you doing here? I came to settle my debt, Ryan said with a smile. Madison frowned, confused. What debt? The bus fare you paid for me yesterday, he replied, his voice warm but tinged with embarrassment. I thought it was only fair to return the favor. She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. It was nothing. You don't have to do that. But Ryan wasn't about to let it go. He wanted to make sure she knew how much her kindness had meant to him. At least let me buy you a coffee, he insisted. Madison hesitated, clearly not sure how to handle the situation. But eventually, she gave in. Fine, she said with a shrug. If that's how you want to settle your debt, then all right. Ryan took a seat at the counter, and Madison poured him a cup of coffee, setting it in front of him with a slight smile. They sat in silence for a few moments before Ryan broke it. Wanting to get to know her better, he had so many questions, but he didn't want to come off as intrusive. So, how long have you been working here? He asked, taking a sip of the coffee. 2 years, she replied. And besides work, I study business administration at night. I want to open my own bakery one day. Her voice held a quiet determination, and Ryan couldn't help but admire her resilience. That's amazing, Ryan said, genuinely impressed. Do you think you'll make it happen? Madison shrugged modestly. I'll try. It's just a dream for now. But I'll get there. Ryan smiled, admiring her conviction. I believe in you. Madison looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. How can you believe in me? We just met yesterday. Ryan took a moment, his gaze thoughtful. Some people, you just recognize right away. There was a pause, and for a brief moment, Madison seemed unsure of how to interpret his words. Before she could respond, one of her coworkers called her name, and she had to step away to assist another customer. Ryan watched her go, a feeling of unease settling in his chest. There was something about her, something real and unpretentious, that he couldn't get out of his mind. As Madison moved back into the flow of the diner's rhythm, Ryan sat quietly, reflecting on their conversation. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the weight of his name, his wealth, or his reputation. It was just two people, talking honestly, and that feeling, that connection, was something Ryan couldn't quite put into words. In the days that followed, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about Madison. He found himself returning to Riverside Cafe every morning, something he never did. The ritual started off simple enough, ordering his coffee, striking up a conversation, asking her about her life. But as time passed, their interactions began to feel more meaningful. They weren't just small talk anymore, they were real conversations. About dreams, struggles, and the future. Each day, it seemed like the space between them narrowed, and Ryan began to realize how much he enjoyed her company. There was a simplicity to it, a purity that he hadn't experienced before. Madison, too, started to notice the shift. At first, she had dismissed him as just another customer. But as the days went by, she realized there was something different about him. Ryan wasn't like the others who came into the diner to enjoy their breakfast and leave without a second thought. He was attentive, genuinely curious about her life. And he always listened. She couldn't help but feel drawn to him, though she still carried the weight of doubt. After all, he was clearly from a world far removed from hers, one of luxury and privilege. Could someone like him really understand her? One day, as she handed him his coffee, Ryan looked at her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. There was a quiet sincerity in his eyes. And for the first time, she felt a flutter in her chest. You know, Ryan said, breaking the silence, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About your dream of opening a bakery. I think you should go for it. Madison looked at him, surprised. You really think so? Ryan nodded, his gaze unwavering. Absolutely. You've got the passion and the drive. You've already got what it takes. I'm not just saying this because you've helped me, I mean it. You should make that dream a reality. Madison felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just the encouragement that she needed, it was the genuine belief Ryan had in her. In what she could accomplish. It made her wonder if he saw something in her that others didn't. As the days went by, their bond grew stronger. Madison began to share more about her life, her struggles growing up, the pain of losing her father, and the sacrifices she made to help her mother. Ryan, in turn, began opening up about his own life. Though not as easily, he told her about the expectations that had been placed on him, the pressure to follow in his family's footsteps, and how he had always felt trapped by his wealth. Madison listened intently, her heart aching for him. She had never realized how difficult it must have been to live a life where every decision had been made for you, where your path was already mapped out. She admired Ryan for his willingness to challenge that, for trying to find something real, something that was his own. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. Ryan walked into the diner, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something more serious. Madison noticed it immediately, her stomach tightening with curiosity. I've made a decision, Ryan said quietly as he sat down across from her. What do you mean? Madison asked, her voice cautious. I've decided to leave my family's business, Ryan confessed, his words heavy with resolve. I don't want to live a life that was chosen for me anymore. I want to do something meaningful. I want to build something real. With you. Madison's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. She had never expected him to take such a drastic step. But in a strange way, she admired his courage. This was his way of proving that he was willing to choose something real over the hollow life of luxury he had been living. I want to help you with your bakery, Ryan continued, his voice soft. I want to be part of something that's not just about money or status. I want to be part of your dream. Madison was silent for a moment, her mind racing to process what he was saying. The idea of working with him, building something together, seemed impossible, but it also felt right. You mean it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. I do. I'm all in. I want to do this with you, Madison, not because of what I can get out of it, but because I believe in you. I believe in your dream. In that moment, Madison realized that something profound had shifted between them. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about trust, about building a life together, about creating something real from the ground up. The walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. I don't know what the future holds, she said softly, her voice full of emotion. But I'm willing to take this step with you. Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. Then let's build something incredible. Together. And just like that, they knew that this was only the beginning. As the weeks went by, Ryan and Madison worked tirelessly to turn their shared dream into a reality. The hotel renovations were progressing smoothly, and Madison's bakery was taking shape beautifully. Every day felt like a step closer to something meaningful, something that was truly theirs. Madison found herself more in love with the process, with building not just a business, but a future with Ryan. The grand opening of the hotel and bakery came sooner than they expected. The coastal town, with its peaceful surroundings, was the perfect backdrop for their new beginning. The scent of freshly baked pastries mixed with the salty sea breeze, filling the air with an undeniable sense of warmth and hope. It was everything they had worked for, and it was just the beginning. On the opening day, as customers slowly trickled in, Madison looked around, overwhelmed with gratitude. She couldn't help but smile as she saw people enjoying her pastries, savoring the flavors she had carefully perfected. Ryan moved through the hotel, ensuring everything was running smoothly, a proud smile on his face as he checked every detail. When the day wound down and the last of the guests left, Ryan found Madison outside, sitting on a bench, gazing at the horizon. He walked over, sat beside her, and took her hand in his. They didn't need words. The joy of what they had built together spoke volumes. Their love, their dream, It was all coming to life. I knew we could do it, Ryan said quietly, his voice full of affection. Madison leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling complete. I never thought I could have it all. But now, I do. And with that, they knew they had found something truly special, not just in their business, but in each other. This was just the beginning of their forever. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring life stories.